And this greater cycle to me represents a maturation in consciousness. That is, growing into more and more of who and what you already essentially are. This is Saturn, girl. And I'm freaking out, yo. Why? Because a dragon is about to devour the sun. I know this isn't a dragon, but it's the closest thing I had. But what do I mean by that? I mean that October 2nd, we have an annular solar eclipse in the sign of the sun's fall, Libra. This is also known as a ring of fire eclipse. Yeah, more like rim of fire. I fell into your sweaty rim of fire. I went down, 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 and your knees went higher. Yeah, that's hot. I'm a Libra moon, so you know I'm used to going down, down, down. I'm kidding. I have lots of fun standing up too. Seriously though, rings of fire are nice, but Libras much prefer gold. Yeah, I know some people call us Libra types shallow. They say things like, real beauty is on the inside. But then their insides are full of shit. They're just mad that we're hot. I'm like, yo, your frumpy ass is cramping my steamy style. Get thee back to Virgo season. For once, this isn't about Libra, even though we assume it always is. I bet they're talking about me again. I know it. If not, they better start talking about me. Seriously though, Libra, we're not here to talk about you. We're here to talk about the solar eclipse. And I ain't gonna lie, it's a big deal. The effects of this solar eclipse will reverberate throughout your life and the whole world for the next 6 months. So, in this video, we're going to talk about the meaning of this solar eclipse and what it means for you personally by doing your horoscopes in the second half of this video. So you better watch until the end. You also need to refer back to this video often because, as I said, these horoscopes will be good for the next 6 months. But first, let's look at the fun chart, shall we? See, here's the moon. She's getting closer. She's about to kiss the sun's hot, sweaty rim. Oh my goodness, you're going all the way inside, you filthy little moon. And boom! We have the solar eclipse. Our mommy moon just got on top. She's riding the light. Say, what are eclipses anyway? I go through this information in greater detail in my lunar eclipse video from last week, so watch that first. But let's do a quick review. When we have a new moon or a full moon within 15 degrees of the lunar nodes, then we have an eclipse. If it's a new moon, then the moon is eclipsing the sun and we have a solar eclipse. If it's a full moon, then the earth is eclipsing the moon and we have a lunar eclipse. But what are the lunar nodes? They are the points where the path of the moon's orbit intersects the earth's. The north node is where the moon's orbit crosses the earth's, ascending towards celestial north. The south node is where the moon's orbit intersects the earth's, descending towards celestial south. They are always exactly opposite each other and move through the zodiac going retrograde or clockwise. We call this nodal precession, which is the time it takes the nodes to return to the same place in the zodiac. This period takes about 18.6 years. And a complete revelation of the nodes through the zodiac is what's called a draconic period. We'll explain where the dragon or draconic symbolism comes from in just a bit. But let's briefly talk about what the lunar nodes mean. In ancient astrology, the nodes were called the eclipsing places because these were the points where sun, moon, and earth align, which is what you need to have an eclipse. And they had an ominous quality in ancient societies. This is where the draconic or dragon symbolism comes from. Because to ancient people, eclipses appeared as if a dragon were devouring the sun. In ancient astrology, the nodes were said to decrease or increase both the malefic or benefic influence of a planet. Malefic means bad, and benefic means good. So the North Node increased things, both the good and the bad, while the South Node decreased things. Again, both the good and the bad. The North Node was known as Rahu and represented a desire for increase and material acquisition, while the South Node was known as Ketu and represented release and a surrender to emptiness. It was more associated with what is called the spiritual path or way of liberation. In modern and evolutionary astrology, the North Node represented your destiny. It was the direction you were moving in for the rest of your life, following your second nodal return around age 38 or so, while the South Node represented the past, or what you were recapitulating in the previous years. You can sort of think of the South Node as the past life, and the North Node as the future life. So what do eclipses mean then? As I said earlier, ancient people typically saw them as ill omens, which is where the dragon symbolism comes from. They were also the primary omens used in ancient Mesopotamia, but they had to do with more collective events, like earthquakes, floods, or the death of a king. As you may know, new moons represent new beginnings, while full moons represent culminations and endings. Therefore, solar eclipses are big new beginnings, while lunar eclipses are big endings. And we usually see the effects of eclipses appear within the following 6 months. We also have a sort of 2-week liminal period between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. We're actually leaving one of these periods right now. To me, it's like a gestation between a big ending and a new beginning. On top of that, we have what are called South Node eclipses and North Node eclipses. If the moon is within 10 to 12 degrees of the North Node, then she's ascending towards celestial north and therefore increasing in her significations, which can be exciting and dangerous. If the moon is within 10 to 12 degrees of the South Node, then she's descending towards celestial south and therefore decreasing in her significations, which can feel more like surrender to the unknown and allowing things to happen. This eclipse in Libra is a South Node eclipse, which means we're learning to let something go in order to make room for a new beginning. As I said earlier, this is an annular eclipse, which means that the moon is far enough away from the Earth that it doesn't fully eclipse the sun, which creates that ring of fire effect. I mean rim of fire, of course. In my own practice, I approach this whole eclipse cycle symbolically. During that draconic period of 18.6 years, the lunar nodes pass through each pair of opposing signs. For example, right now the North Node is in Aries, while the South Node is in Libra. That means the eclipses will mostly oscillate between those two signs, and therefore those two whole sign houses in your chart. The two houses the nodes are in for you indicate which phase you're in the greater eclipse cycle. And this greater cycle to me represents a maturation in consciousness. That is, growing into more and more of who and what you already essentially are. I liken each of these phases to a moon phase, which can tell us something about how the entire cycle progresses. And, of course, the moon defines this cycle. This cycle begins with the 1st and 7th house phase, where the crisis begins. I think of it like a new moon. By crisis, I mean we often have an existential crisis. We ask ourselves, who am I? What am I? What does it all mean? What's the point? You see, our relationship to self is challenged, and how we relate to ourselves affects how we relate to others. This phase can lead to breakups, wanting to be single, or even meeting a new partner, which often gives rise to a new understanding of ourselves. Next, we have the 12th house, 6th house phase, which I call the integration or cocoon phase, and I compare it to a first quarter moon. We face resistance and then withdraw from drama and public life. We need more time to be alone. This is healing seclusion, We need to integrate and process all that we learned in the previous phase to start developing a new understanding of ourselves. This could precipitate mental health crises, as well as injuries or illnesses. Therefore, this is the time to go into your psychic cocoon. You need time to change and develop. Sort of like a caterpillar. A hungry caterpillar. A caterpillar who's hungry for human flesh. Then we have the 11th and 5th house phase, which I call the butterfly phase. And I liken this to a gibbous moon. This is like emergence into the light of day after having been sealed in your cocoon. And it's like a period of looking forward to a goal or a plan. It usually indicates new beginnings with children or supporters. Sometimes people get pregnant, or get more popular, or less. I generally think of this as a time of optimism, where we learn to enjoy ourselves again, reconnect with others, and cultivate a vision of who we want to be. It sounds fun, but it can be quite challenging when something you've been hiding is suddenly exposed. After that, we have the 10th and 4th house phase, which I call the harvesting or culmination phase. I liken this to a full moon. This is a time of maturity, fruition, and manifestation, where we make things happen. We often face big changes in terms of life direction, as well as home or our roots. This is like a crescendo or fulfillment of a crisis. People often move or change jobs, or they see their whole life direction shifts. I quit a job of 20 years and moved out of state during this phase. The 9th and 3rd house phase is next, and I call this the reflection or contemplation phase. And I think of it sort of like a disseminating moon, or what you may call a waning gibbous. This is the phase I'm in now. This is where we reflect on how we did, and how the implications of our actions affected our understanding. We often see our beliefs change to suit those new understandings. This includes our spiritual and political values, and the subsequent desire to express them. Sometimes people go back to school or start an educational pursuit. Our new worldview comes from a reorientation of motive, and we feel the pull to communicate it to others. Finally, we have the 2nd and 8th house phase, which I call death and auditing. And I liken it to the balsamic moon, which some of you might call the waning crescent, and is also known as the dark moon. This is the phase of material results and consequences of the rest of the entire 18.6 year cycle. This isn't like the culmination of the 10th and 4th house phase. No, this is different. That one is more outward and visible, like reaching maturity in adulthood, while this one is more inwardly focused and more associated with death and letting go. We take stock of our material achievements and probably feel a mix of satisfaction and discontent. However, dissatisfaction usually wins out, and we begin looking ahead, questioning ourselves, as well as our gains and losses. Think of your time and effort as an investment in life. How will you get the most return on your investment? The last solar eclipse we had was in Aries back in April, and it was a North Node eclipse, which means it probably brought a period of heightened activity and anxiety. I want you to think back to what's happened between then and now. How have things unfolded since then? You likely set things in motion back then. But this solar eclipse in Libra is a South Node eclipse, so it will bring events out of your control that will govern your life for the next 6-month period. It's more about allowing than resisting. Which reminds me of surfing. See, I used to surf back when I lived in California, and let me tell you, things are much more enjoyable when you can move with the wave rather than getting pummeled by it. So you better learn to ride the wave, bruh, because we got a gnarly set coming in. This is also the last solar eclipse in Libra of this phase. Then in January of 2025, the lunar nodes will move into new signs for the first time since July of 2023. So this begins a new eclipse phase. But now we're going to look and see how this eclipse affects you personally by doing your horoscopes for the occasion. Now remember, we do these for each rising sign because that's what determines our houses. However, if you don't know it, just watch for your sun sign. And remember, refer back to these horoscopes for the next 6 months. So let's start with Aries and Libra rising, our Aries Libra homies. So you see, this is the 1st and 7th house phase of self, your body, mind, soul, and partnerships and oppositions. We see a combination of big changes to our appearance and our identities, as well as how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to others. We often experience new modes of thinking or have new health issues to address. For Aries risings, the solar eclipse in April likely precipitated a new experience of yourself, which dramatically changed how you relate to others. Now, you may meet someone new or let go of a partner who doesn't align with your values. You may have to deal with conflicts stemming from a past partner as well, which is sometimes alimony or child support. For Libra risings, though, you probably experienced a big change in your relationships, which leads to an existential crisis, where you perhaps feel adrift, insecure. But the positive side of this eclipse is that it propels you into a new understanding of yourself. But let's move on to Taurus rising. Our Taurus Scorpio rising homies. We have Taurus and Scorpio rising here. And this is the 12th and 6th house phase, right? Which is isolation and health. Here we see a combination of big changes in our mental and physical health, which are reflective of the previous existential and relationship crises. We feel the need for solitude in order to understand and integrate these effects. For Taurus risings, this phase is about readjusting your lifestyle to accommodate big changes in your health after a period of seclusion or depression. You may have to attend to a chronic illness, or, on the flip side, readdress the various commitments you've taken on and narrow your focus to those which best align with your new motives. For Scorpio risings, though, this phase will highlight the need for withdrawal and processing after letting go of a health crisis or cumbersome commitments. One of my mentors once said, "Tread lightly with few obligations." It's about lightening your load in order to achieve greater clarity. Who wants to lighten my load? But anyway, let's move on to Gemini and Sagittarius. Our Gemini and Sagittarius homies. So this puts the eclipse, right? This is the 11th and 5th house phase of optimism and enjoyment. This is the butterfly phase. It sounds so much fun, doesn't it? Well, not always. This is where we come out of our cocoons and have the opportunity for new connections and greater enjoyment in our lives. Sometimes people have children, right? On that note, I advise all Gemini risings to use protection during this time. And I know most of you hate that. Right. But we do have less reproductive rights these days, so, However, this also represents finding pleasure in things again and being a sparkly butterfly, as well as letting go of an idealistic endeavor of some sort or leaving a circle of friends. On the other hand, Sagittarius risings will end up focusing on a new vision, a new circle of like-minded people, or new supporters after letting go of a hobby or an issue with children. It's putting your new motives into practice. This could also help or hurt your popularity, depending on how well you do. If you have selfish or harmful motives, they will likely be exposed, and you may lose friends and supporters. But let's move on to Cancer and Capricorn rising. Our Cancer and Capricorn rising homies. This is the 10th and 4th house phase of maturity and manifestation, including your public and private life. This is when you reap what you sow. The last phase, you put new motives into practice. And this phase brings the results of that practice to fruition. This phase represents both achievements and consequences of our actions. Have you been putting effort into making things happen? Or have you been waiting for someone else to do it for you? For Cancer risings, you may physically move, find a new place, or make big changes to where you currently live. You may also notice big changes in your private life, precipitated by letting go of your previous life direction. You need to organize your insides to better reflect your outsides. For Capricorn risings, though, this will likely bring a big change in life direction after the close of a living situation or a significant shakeup in your private life or having to do with your parents. You could start a new job, begin preparing for a career change. You see, often we make a big break from our former ambitions. But either way, this is where you realize the fruits of your new motives. That is, what they will bring you. Anyway, let's move on to Leo and Aquarius rising. Our Leo and Aqua rising Hermes. This is the 9th and 3rd house phase. Yes, this is the phase of reflection where we consider how good our fruit tastes. Sweet dripping nectar. Yes. Anyway, how did the previous phase alter our thinking? What did we do wrong? More importantly, what did we do right? Our beliefs and how we communicate them are highlighted here, and we often reevaluate our motives based on the quality of our harvest. For Leo risings, you're learning new things. You may even get involved in teaching or training. In this phase, we often begin to communicate our new values after letting go of long-held beliefs that no longer suit us. What we thought was important to us seems silly now, and we openly critique our old values through our words and deeds. For Aquarius risings, that's me, this eclipse will bring big changes in our values, spiritual, political, and philosophical, after seeing that our previous ones didn't hold up to scrutiny. This may have been painful, but it leads to a greater understanding and a new worldview. We could also get antagonistic towards our old beliefs. And we have to decide whether it's worth cutting off friends or family over disagreements. But let's move on to Virgo and Pisces rising. Yes, our Virgo and Pisces rising Hermes. This is the 8th and 2nd house phase of final consequences, death, and letting go. This phase entails the material results of our motives, and therefore recognizing what in our lives needs to go and no longer serves us. This may involve our finances, possessions, rewards, and losses, as well as discontent with our present accomplishments, and looking ahead to a new mode of understanding. For Virgo risings, this is more about taking stock of your stability and security, and you could consider how you could further simplify your life in order to make greater progress in the future. Remember that line in Fight Club? The things you own end up owning you. The eclipse in April likely brought losses, and this one is about adjustment and adaptation. For Pisces risings, this is primarily about letting go. You may have had to deal with a literal death of someone close to you, or perhaps it was a material or financial loss, maybe even the failure of a plan or project. This is a period of discontent where you start to see that what you've held on to has also held you back. Either way, the lesson is about realizing how precious life and our time on this planet really is. Anyway, I hope this was useful. Don't forget to book a reading on my website, saturngirl.org. And if you can't afford a reading, attend one of my live streams and get one for free. However, in order to get notified about my live streams, you have to subscribe to my channel. Love you. Thank you for watching. Like this video and subscribe to my channel. And make sure to click the bell when you subscribe so that you get notified when my new videos drop. And I do the best readings. It's science. You can book through my website, saturngirl.org. And if you can't afford a reading right now, come to my live streams and get one for free. But you have to be subscribed to get notified about them. And please consider tipping me. It helps me make such wonderful content. You can give through super thanks below or become a member of my channel. And remember, I love you. You're beautiful. And have a wonderful, whatever it is you're having.